enter the age of AI, right? And there's now things are even moving faster and there's more going on. What I feel like is happening is sort of an arms race between, can I automate it? And can I automate it well?
I want to dig into how you balance speed and security at scale and what you're seeing as the future when it comes to AI.
Brian Shea is an executive security leader with over 30 years of experience protecting Fortune 500 companies, high-growth startups, and everything in between. As a former CISSP and CISM, he's helped organizations secure billions in revenue while enabling innovation across AI, cloud, and emerging technologies.
Can you build me a Tetris clone? And it's like, yeah, I could do that. Like 14 minutes later, I had functional code. Between writing the code and building a quality app, there's a big gap. Building the good app is still just as hard as it was. And I feel like that's the tension right now.
How did you go from being an MP officer to technology and cybersecurity?
I had a great set of skills around leadership and managing people, and I know how to get things from A to B, right? There was a bunch of things that the Army teaches. With the emerging quantum and the state of AI, I feel like there are some absolutely amazing opportunities.
Welcome to Automate or Die Trying. We're moving fast and staying secure isn't a contradiction. It's a job. I'm Will Ramos, and today I'm talking with Brian Shea. Brian, for folks who don't know you, give us a quick version. What are you responsible for right now? And what scale are you operating at?
Sure thing. Thank you first for having me on the show. I'm recently separated from Salesforce, so I am currently in business for myself. And what I'm doing there is I'm creating AI and vibe coding technologies to enhance people's ability to become employed when they have pivoting from, say, big tech jobs to other jobs. And before that, I spent most of my career at Fortune 50 companies doing big things, Bank of America, Microsoft, Salesforce. And most of the time I did there, I was in security, automation, and compliance.
Okay. Yeah, so based on your profile, it looks like you've been at this for 30 plus years, right? Like you mentioned, Bank of America, Microsoft, Salesforce, and now you're building like that AI startup, right, from scratch.
That's correct.
That's kind of a big shift. So tell me, like, I want to dig into how you balance speed and security at scale and what you're seeing as the future when it comes to AI. Does that sound good?
Yeah, totally. And that's sort of a classic conundrum in IT, right? Like how do you go fast and not break things as opposed to go fast and break things, right?
Yeah,
And as a security person, my job tends to be to find the way to go fast while not breaking things, or at least break them in predictable and understandable ways if we can get away with that. And it's hard. It really is, because speed is the coin of the realm in a lot of IT, and it really, like, speed to market matters. And so generally, for me at least, and I'll get into the AI shifting here in just a moment, but generally leading into this, sort of the way I would manage through that is by focusing on the customers. Like, you don't want to buy a product that's half baked, right? You want your product that you use to be fully done and ready to go. So speed at the expense of quality cannot generally be there's some trade-offs you can make there, but you have to be super careful on those trade-offs, because you make too many of those and your product quality starts to fall. And in my mind, and now I'm biased, I'm a security guy, so I'll admit to that first, but security is one of those places people do not want you to trade off, right? They want their data to be secure. They want their experience to be there. And quite frankly, they want your service to be available when they go get it. So I feel like those are kind of the stage setting, right? So now enter the age of AI, right? And there's now things are even moving faster and there's more going on. What I feel like is happening is sort of an arms race between, can I automate it? And can I automate it well? And can I keep it secure doing it, has now taken on a whole new spectrum of potential problems, right? Because the answer to can I automate it is probably now yes and faster, right? Vibe coding I could produce. And my experiment with vibe coding literally started with Saturday evening. I'm on my phone. I said, I'm going to download this OpenAI thing. I wonder what that can do. And threw out a question, said, hey, can you build me an app? And I think if I remember correctly, the scenario I use is, can you build me a Tetris clone? And it's like, yeah, I could do that. Like 14 minutes later, I had functional code. And I was like, holy smokes, that was impressive. Like, wow. Now, wasn't great. The game, it had a lot of tuning that needed to happen, but I mean, it was functional. So I can see where there's a lot of place out there for people to get sort of caught up in that wow factor of I can go do this fast without realizing that between writing the code and building a quality app, there's a big gap. And that gap is all of those non-functional specs that you get, like availability, security, and some of those things. Like software engineering, I still think is a discipline that we need and we'll need to have for a period of time. Whereas writing code will be easier. Building the good app is still just as hard as it was. And I feel like that's the tension right now. And security is getting better in AI. I feel like we're seeing some of the AI controls, both in the use of AI, but also in just the output that it creates. It's getting better, right? We're teaching it to code securely. We're giving it OWASP top 10 kind of stuff. And we're saying, hey, go do this. But it's not all there yet. And frankly, it still hallucinates enough that you're going to have to test. You're going to have to figure it out, right? So you, like I said, in my silliness and exuberance to get going in AI, I picked a language that I didn't fully understand. So when I did it, I started writing in the coding language Dart with the Flutter framework. And I did that. Yeah. And I did that it was a multi-platform language. And I thought, oh, great. So the output will be useful on multiple platforms. That's a great target. I want to do that. I've coded in Java, Visual Basic, and a variety of languages before. So it wasn't like completely new to coding, but I'd never seen this particular language. And I thought, well, AI can help me with that, right? And that's going to be great. I got about 2 days into coding and I had a dependency nightmare that was like all over the place, right? So the good news, bad news is you can dig a hole much faster now than you could before. The good news is I can also use AI to undig the hole, right? I went back and I said, hey, what happened here? Like, why are these dependencies wrong? And it said, well, let's go troubleshoot. And it walked me through the troubleshooting steps. And I said, well, step A didn't work. Step B looks promising. How do we fix it? So even though AI put me in the hole, it was actually helped coach me out of the hole again. And in doing so, I then learned a lot about this process and about its capabilities. I also learned that prompt specificity is immensely powerful.
Oh yeah,
The good prompt is a great way to go. A bad prompt, you'll get still output, but it just may not be the output you're expecting, right? And so I'm learning continuously how to check my assumptions and be specific about the outputs that I need, so I can sort of rein in the creativity that AI wants to put in there and really just get those outputs that I'm looking for.
Yeah, sometimes the prompt itself, you can build it with guardrails, right?
Yeah,
and be, like you said, specificity. So that's great. So let's kind of take a little bit. Let's go back in back in a little bit in the past, right? I noticed from your profile you're prior military, right? It looks like you were like an MP.
That's correct.
In the military. So walk me through that journey. Like, how do you go from? And thank you for your service, by the way. I'm actually prior military, so
thank you for your service as well. Yeah,
like thank you. But how did you shift that? Like, how did you go from being an MP officer to technology and cybersecurity specifically? Like, kind of walk me through that.
Sure. So, as with a lot of things in my career, I followed a quasi non-standard path, and I would say that I encourage people to think about non-standard paths, even if not following my specific one, because I joked with people that I mentor today, if I tried to get into security today doing what I did then, I wouldn't get in, right? But the reality is I came out of the military and I had a great set of skills around leadership and managing people, and I know how to get things from A to B, right? There was a bunch of things that the Army teaches that really I was trying to figure out, how do I translate this into my next thing? And so when I was in college, I went to school for chemistry, and I have a bachelor's in chemistry, which in the field of chemistry qualifies you to clean the test tubes of somebody else's project, because you need at least a master's to do anything interesting. And so I was like, well, I could go back to school in chemistry, but I'm 4 years gone from that, or I could go be a police officer. And I was living in LA at the time, and I thought maybe that's a little more dangerous than I was wanting to go. And I appreciate all that do it. I don't want to disparage it, but I just didn't know if it was for me. So I kind of looked into my bag of tricks and said, what is it that I do that I've always loved? And I thought, well, this tech thing's really taken off. Maybe I can jump into tech. So I jumped in and started using this. I've been coding since I was in high school. My dad got a PC when we were young, and I really started getting into it. So I kind of jumped in, and I realized I had sort of that hacker mentality a little bit, right? Take it apart, find out how it works, find out where things break so I know how to fix it. And I got a job in tech support, and that encouraged that same kind of thinking, right? Know where it breaks so you can help other people get fixed. And that really sparked a level of curiosity in sort of how things work and why things work, which led me, that was like the first step down the path of getting into security, where I really started to
Yeah.
really understand, like, I want to do this at scale. So worked in tech support, did a lot of support functions, did a lot of education just on the internal workings of computers, how code works and all those other things. And then a local area bank in the Seattle area had reached out to me and said, hey, we're looking for a security analyst to come build a piece of software for us. Can you do that? And I'm like,
Mm.
yeah, I could do that. And I'd love to come in and work for you on a security. So I got into a bank where I was writing code that helped them take user requests and automate them. And
Mm.
that was my sort of first formal step into the security world. And of course, at a
Okay.
bank, you're at a generally most of the big banks. This was a bank that was recently purchased by the West Coast Bank of America before their ultimate merger with Nations Bank to become the existing functions. They were still, I mean, but to me, it was like 3,500 computers was huge, right? I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a giant network. And so I'm out there, I'm doing this work, and they're very risk averse. They're very security forward in their culture. And that really, I think, cemented in my mind that this journey was one for me. Like, I really liked that function. I like doing it. These are problems that needed to be solved to help people and protect money. And I was like, that feels good. I like that. So let's keep doing it. So I ended up spending 10 years at what ended up being the current Bank of America.
Mm.
I went from security analyst to I was running the entire Windows security team for them for a number of years. And going through that entire journey of sort of distributed computing breaking in, and then the web breaking in, and having online banking become a thing. All those, I was on those journeys with the bank, and each time we expanded and changed and embraced a new technology, it brought a whole new set of challenges with it that just kept it fresh, I guess. It was a little scary because it was
Mm.
always fresh in a partially scary kind of way when you're in security, right? When the bad guys find out something that you didn't think about. But it was also fresh in an exciting way because these were new problems. These were cutting edge activities that we got to work on. And that just kept me going. And to be fair, till this day, that's exactly why I stay in it. I love the field. I love helping protect people, but I love that it's constantly changing and you have to stay on your toes to keep it going.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, in your past experiences, have you ever had um, like engineering teams trust automation, right? Like, there's always, I've always say in my field or in my career that I'm lazy, right? So I look for ways to
Yeah.
automate things, right? I don't like working with spreadsheets. I don't like having to do mundane tasks. So I'm always looking for a way to do things faster, right? So in the spirit of that, like, have you ever been in a situation where engineering teams or management did not trust, you want to automate, say, a user request or something, right? Were there fears in that, and how did you handle the situations essentially?
Sure. Yes, I think is the short answer. That the fear was always, if you don't get it right and you automate it, you now just made mistakes at scale, right?
Exactly.
And
Hmm.
that's always, that you always have some variant of that, especially when scale breaches into the hundreds of thousands or millions of computers. You start really talking about big scale, like taking down business operations kind of things. So the sensitivity to it has to be right and it has to be fast. And again, you get back to that tension between quality and speed. And so what
Hmm.
I've tried to do as I go through that is say, there's a couple of techniques we can use to do that, right? The first one being test, right? Absolutely essential to test what you're doing before you try to scale it out, right? Get it right once and then scale it, as opposed to try to get it right while you're scaling. You're just going to make
Hmm.
your life simpler. Um, we may not always have time for that. So the second part of that is where are your guardrails? How are you going to know that it's failing, right? So I can't wait till the very last second and have it fail all in one big bang. I should know
Right.
early and often that something weird is going on, and I should be able to detect that. So how have you instrumented these things? How are you logging these things? How are you watching it and tracking it to make sure that as you deploy, you're not doing a big bang deployment. You do like a 1%, 2%, 5%, 10% kind of lead in. And then eventually, once you've proven that it's scaling well and all the right things are
Hmm.
happening, then you blow it all the way out to the whole thing. Um, but ultimately, I think what really came down, like my experience really led to, was nobody trusts the technology, they trust the people. And it really just
Very
comes
true.
down to, if you have a track record of getting it right and doing it right, and you come to the table and say, I want to do this thing and I'm going to be careful, they'll believe you because you've got that track record. And like I said, it's not about the tech at that point. It's about you. Are you the one that's going to do the right thing? If you're the new guy on the block and you say, I want to do this and it could affect every one of our customers, you're probably going to have to go through a lot of extra rigor. And I don't think that's all bad, but I do think there's a way we should get better at that. There are automated ways that we could do that. Like I said, through automated testing and validation, there's, if you've got a good set of test cases and you can show through testing that this is going to succeed, then it doesn't matter who's pushing the buttons at that point. But we're still we're all people. We're going to make trust decisions based on interpersonal relationships. That's a normal human thing. And I do think that that's reasonable and fair. And conversely, if you've shown yourself to make a mistake, which by the way, we all will do, and I have done in my past, the way that you handle that mistake is just as important to building that trust as never having made it in the first place. Because eventually you have to, I had to do this once. I had to go to the CIO and say, the PDC that is running all of this regional login just fell over, and don't look for the cause. It was me, right? So reboot the server. It's not a hack. You don't have to do hours of troubleshooting. And he's like, I probably yell at you later, but I at least appreciate your honesty for coming here and just telling me, right? Because he's like, yeah, you shouldn't have done what you did, and we'll figure that out. But I now don't have a team of 20 people running around trying to find a problem and letting customers suffer in the meantime. You just owned up to it. So I appreciate that. We'll come back to the other part, but let's go fix stuff, right? And I think that really built a significant amount of trust with that team, because they were like, look, you could have wandered off and we probably never would have known what happened. It was sort of a obscure edge use case. But standing up and admitting to it really built trust with them, so that when I did come and say, hey, these are big deals, or these aren't big deals, or these are things, they're like, we trust you because we believe that you're being honest and upfront with us.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got to definitely build that trust, So, so that kind of segue into my next question. I know, again, based on your profile, it looked like you had a stuffing attack during Diwali, right?
That's correct.
That's reactive, right? High stakes firefighting, right? So, but you also talk about building proactive systems, right? So how do you balance those two worlds, right? Building systems that prevent problems while still being ready to respond when things go sideways.
Sure. So in that particular case, it was actually kind of funny because it wasn't the security systems that were the initial detection point. It was our performance systems. Diwali, in that particular case, Diwali always runs hot. There's a selling season. We're run, I think historically, we'll run about 60% utilization, and Diwali throughout the entire festival probably runs at about 82% utilization. And that's just because that's what we expect. That's peak season. And one of our performance engineers had reached out and just said, hey, we're spiking over even the usual hot. We're hotter than that even. And it's weird because it all seems to be coming from Europe. It's not coming from APAC. And so we're like, okay. And so he's like, I don't know what this is, but it smells weird. And I thought security should know. And that ultimately led us to discovering the password stuffing attack and being able to stop it and so forth. And so to the question, like, how do you balance those things? I think building into the system the appropriate guardrails, alerts, and things, and then teaching people it is okay to raise your hand and say, this is weird and I don't know, right? Because in this case, that's precisely what that engineer did. He said, look, I can't justify this additional performance and I don't know where it's coming from. It looks weird enough that it could be a security incident or it could be nothing, but let's figure it out. Now, the good news with that, of course, is security should be on a quality program prepared to respond, because attackers aren't going to announce themselves and give you 3 weeks to prep, right? They attack when they attack. Right. So you have to have a reactive component to security, and like many professions, stuff goes wrong. So balancing I can be proactive and detect things as best as possible, I think comes a lot to just building the right systems, building the right process, avoiding what you know you can avoid, because the stuff you can't avoid or the stuff you don't know how to avoid will end up being reactive. And then you need to flip the switch over to the other side, and you need to be able to say, now we have something going. What's the playbook, right? Don't make it up as you go along. There needs to be a playbook. What's most important? System recovery, data protection. How are you going to start off? Who gets to tell the boss, right? Who do we call? Right. Do lawyers need to be involved? Does this look like there's going to be, legal cases coming out of this? All of those things are something you need to decide beforehand and be prepped for. And you need to tabletop it out and test it so that when it's actually happening, this feels familiar and this feels like something you can do. Now, the good news as we bring sort of AI and other automation, some of these things that used to be very manual can be automated via AI. But my suggestion for current, at least, is never let AI respond to anything without a human in the loop, especially under urgent or pressing situations, because if it hallucinates, it can make things much worse or provide you with a false sense of security that you don't really have. So it's always going to be a check but or trust but verify kind of scenario.
Absolutely. Now, do you think as AI specifically evolves, do you ever see a situation where you can trust it, or it's a full autonomous system? Or do you feel like at some point there's always going to a human's going to always have to be in the loop?
That's a great question. And I tend to be an optimist who has a cynical streak in him. So to explain my answer ahead of time a little bit, I think the answer is yes, it can get there, but it can only get there and it can only be as good as the people around it and the training around it. In other words, I can train a system to do what we know how to do. It can create and synergize off of those systems to improve those systems. But in reality, it will make the same mistakes we do because what the unknown unknowns will continue to exist. And it can, just like a human can, it can extrapolate into that and project some knowledge into a space and say, I think I know what that looks like. But until I get in and put my hands on it, I can't do that. And in those cases, I don't think you can't avoid everything with AI. A simple example is we had a data center one time in Ireland, and we always have two power supplies running in the data centers, one on one side of the building, one on the other side of the building. They're from two different carriers in case something happens, et cetera. I keep the data center up. And in my entire career, I've never seen this happen, but literally on the same day, lightning struck the transformer of one side of the building. And as the truck was coming to fix the transformer, he actually hit a pole on the other side of the building and knocked down the power on the other side of the building. And I'm like, what are the odds of that? Like that is just not.
Should have played the lottery that day.
Hey, seriously. Yeah. It was like, wow. But so stuff like that will come up. And, to the point of like, could AI respond? Well, sure, AI can switch over the data systems and can detect that there are errors and can make things happen. There's a certain point in that scenario, and that particular one's a little bit extreme, but there are points in all these scenarios where AI won't know what to do. And at that point, the question is how reliable is it versus will it hallucinate, and how much can you trust that? And if you're betting your business, I wouldn't currently and probably never would with the current LLM technology or Gen AI technology articulate that it will be reliable enough to bet my business on 100% of the time. Most of the time it's pretty good. Most of the time I feel like it's strong. But boy, if it's that, you have one chance to make this decision right, are you going to bet that AI won't hallucinate? Right now, my answer would be no, because I want to make sure that a person does that. There's some secondary considerations in there. As an example, AI has no standing in court. So if somebody gets sued, you can't just go and say, well, AI made the decision. It's not my fault, right? It's like, they're like, yeah, no, sorry. That's not how this is going to work. And so you do have to be careful about some of these decisions, especially big, impactful decisions to your customer or to your business. They can result in liability that AI simply can't be the solution for. So in those cases, I feel like there's a secondary consideration, which is the people that run the business need to make business risk decisions at the end of the day, because you're taking known risk, you're making actions that might put customers at risk or might save the customer. Those all have to be justified by a human being, or at least as we stand today. And I think, for me at least, I don't see AI being good enough to fix that problem for many years to come, just based on how it's evolving.
Yeah, good answer. So if you could give one piece of advice to a security leader who's trying to move fast without breaking things, right? Not platitude, but something that you've actually learned the hard way, what would it be?
The Navy SEALs have a saying, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And so I would stick to the idea of speed isn't about starting fast. It's about closing the time from beginning to end. And so if I plan for 20 days and then execute in 10, I'm better off than if I start coding and write code in 45 days, because now I'm planned. I don't have all the testing failures. So if I start slowly and intentionally, and I build off that intention until I can get to scale, typically I'm going to exponentiate faster and hit speed faster and quality better than if I just jump in and start coding, right? So the net lesson out of that is plan first, act second. there are times, obviously, incidents, events, some things that don't play in that space. But if I'm just thinking like I have a new idea that I need to get to market, sitting down and writing 7,000 lines of code before you have a strategy probably isn't the best use of that time. Sit down, lay down the strategy, talk about go to market, figure out how you're going to get there, figure out what you're trying to do, lay out that strategy, and then start to nail it down. Because again, for each piece you get right, you're accelerating the future. And that's where you get that exponentiation from, is that little flywheel that turns with getting it right first. And I feel like that's sometimes missed, or sometimes we get it partway there and then we want to launch and we want to MVP it and then we never come back and fix the rest. Those are mistakes, right? Like we want the thing to work like it's supposed to. And if we stop partway, it's maybe 60% there. There are reasons to do that. I understand financial realities and startups are different than big companies and a bunch of other things. But if I'm building an internal tool or I'm doing something like that, I should always finish it, in my opinion, because you want it to do what it's supposed to do. I don't want to have to keep patching it, binding it, or have people clean up after it. It should be doing the right thing. I might release it if I need to, but I should always take on those backlog items of saying, now go fix the things that I didn't finish. And I think that's important. Product-wise, similarly, if I can get it down to a point where it's running, working, and executing well, then I can turn it to scale, because scaling's easy when it's running right.
Right.
Scaling looks easy when it's not running right and you don't know it because you don't know it, and you'll scale a mistake to 10 million instead of 1,000, then now it's suddenly really expensive and difficult to clean up. So I'm a strong advocate for you will always take on tech debt. I don't know how to avoid it, but you have to always have a plan to clean up the trailing edge of your technology so that as you embrace the leading edge, that gap between leading and trailing doesn't get so wide that it becomes unmanageable.
Okay. Makes sense. Yeah. So, so Coffee Badger, right? I know you talked about it a little bit in the beginning, right? So it's in stealth, which means you can't tell me stuff about it, or what does that mean?
So
kind of talk to me about it.
Sure thing. And so I can talk to you about it. I will say that there are a few things that I probably won't share more because I don't know the details enough. I'm still working through them. So for me, at least, stealth indicated a level of early stage where I'm kind of building through it. But yeah, I started, as I said, I started using AI and doing AI coding. I had a problem that I wanted to solve. And frankly, it was my wife's becoming a Pilates instructor. And it was really difficult to go through all these paper manuals and build these routines that were safe and met all the criteria you needed to do. And I'm like, boy, that just looks like a process that's so suited for automating, and specifically automating through AI. So I was like, I wonder if I could write a query that would just help her build these routines correctly. I was like, okay. So I started playing with AI. It started out as that. And then from there, I started saying, well, I wonder if she needs it, maybe other instructors or maybe studios or franchises might need something like this. So I started doing some homework and I found out that, yeah, this looks like it's a potential marketplace. Now,
nice.
Truth be told, ran the numbers. Doesn't look like I'm going to be, anywhere near Elon Musk or Bill Gates anytime in the future because of this. But certainly is something that could put an extra income stream in, which was really the goal for me. I wasn't looking to build something where I could suddenly become rich. I was looking for a passive income stream that I could put out there and supplement both my existing income, but also during retirement would continue in so I could still travel the world and be making money while I'm doing it. So that was kind of the early motivation.
Right.
And as I've looked through this and as I found out about it, I thought, boy, that's a cool niche, right? To be able to say like, and then I've opened up a community on Discord for people, and I threw it out on LinkedIn one day just because there's so many people are trying to learn to pivot from I work for somebody else to I want to do something on my own. And so I was taking some of the learning that I had from building Coffee Badger, and I put it out on this Discord site and said, hey, if people are willing and wanting to pivot, like go, like pivot, learn to vibe code, learn what AI is. Let's build some stuff. And again, maybe it won't help everybody, probably won't, but boy, wouldn't it be nice if you could just get 1 or 2 or 3 people out there that didn't have to wait for the job, but could go get something and go build something. And so I put that out there. And so I'm building both that community as well as that app just to kind of carry that forward. If I, to my point earlier, if I get it right with this one app, then my goal would be to find other apps that I could potentially create and maybe have 2 or 3 apps in the hopper. But for right now, I'm trying to just focus on getting that app built and figuring out what that process looks like so that if and when we're ready, we could scale that out.
Nice, nice. So that being said, tell me one thing you're excited about.
One thing I am excited about,
Yeah.
it is an interesting time in technology, and with the emerging quantum and the state of AI, I feel like there are some absolutely amazing opportunities coming in the future. And I look at this and say, like, I mean, we're even seeing the early stage of AI doing drug research and Alzheimer's treatments, and there's things that are coming out of the use of AI that weren't even possible before 2017, right? When the transformers first started showing up in the LLMs, and when the generative AI first started to really kind of take on what we now know as our current LLM technology. It just wasn't possible. Now, suddenly this accelerant has turned, and there's so much opportunity space for some really cool things to happen. And
Yep.
I'm really excited about where that can go. There's just so many things that I wish we knew, and I think LLMs can help us get there.
Absolutely.
That being said, there's the obvious other side of that, which is we have to be very careful with every new technology that we build, because it's kind of like having a hammer. A hammer can be used for good, it can be used for bad. It's how you use it that makes it into something. AI can be the same way. Like, we're seeing AI generated attacks, deep fakes, and those sorts of things. So we have to be careful on how do we build this technology in a way that it is hopefully governed enough that we can at least tell the difference, right? Because we can't govern all technology. It's, if I could build it, somebody else could too. My guardrails won't be theirs. My ethics might not even be theirs. So with that being said, we might have tension there, but it's putting us in a place where we have a lot of capability, and I think that's huge. And I'm really excited about that. And like I said, I really kind of think about this and say, what happens when I put an AI system and I couple it with a quantum system to the point where I can go faster even than I can now? Like, how much better, faster are we going to get and be? Because that, I don't know if that's possible. There may be somebody out there that's wiser than I am on this that'll say, like, oh, that'll never happen because of this, and cool, I'm willing to be proven wrong. But the reality is, it looks really exciting to me, and I feel like this is one of those moments where we're living in just before this like massive explosion of awesome tech, and that's really exciting, because there's, to me that's, it feels just like I was old enough to be around before there was an internet, right? And you started feeling that, like, when the internet first started to evolve, we didn't know what to do with it at first. It was kind of a dumping ground for information, and it was kind of fun, but there wasn't a search engine even. And then suddenly Google came out, and you're like, oh, I can get around, right? And then suddenly everybody had all this information at their fingertips, and I'm thinking, wow, that's awesome. But it didn't have all the context that we're going to have in the AI version of this. AI brings context with it, and it brings a deeper analysis with it. So I think this is sort of that next step in that evolution where you're really going to see some really big change coming. And I, like I said, I'm really excited about that. I am not a AI doomsayer, right? I know there's a lot of them out there, but I am not one of them. I think actually AI plus human is going to turn things really amazingly well.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. So before we wrap up, where do you want people to go if they want to follow you or what you're doing to connect with you? Like LinkedIn, Discord, anything like that?
Sure, absolutely. Well, the best one and the most active is LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time there, so that would be awesome. I try to respond to all of my direct messages, and I will say that right now I'm getting a lot of them because I just came off a security event where I did a talk on leadership, and everybody's bothering me for the deck. I shouldn't say bothering, that's probably not the right way. Everybody's asking for the deck, and I want to share it with them. Too bad it's now bigger than LinkedIn can share, so I'm finding a file share where I can go out and do that. But LinkedIn's my best choice. If people would like to join the Discord, those sites have links I can share, but they are time bound by definition. That's how Discord runs their shop. So what I'll do is I post on LinkedIn the updated links so that people can continue to join. So that's why I think LinkedIn will probably be the best choice overall.
Great. Well, everybody, that was Brian Shaw. Thank you again for joining us, Brian. And definitely, I'll send you the link to the podcast and go from there.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I hope everybody enjoyed, and let me know if there's any follow-ups that we want to do, because sometimes things go down a rabbit hole that you want to keep going in. So let me know if there's anything else.
I felt we barely scratched the surface when we talked to AI. So I definitely would like to maybe have you come back on the show and talk a little bit deeper dive into that.
Fantastic. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir.
All right.
Great
Take
day.
care.